Hey everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder of videos, and a tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to another DM's Guild review, my written and video view series. We take a look at the adventures and supplemental material at the Dungeon Masters Guild website. With this video, I'll be reviewing the encounter book, Encounters at the Wayside Inn, designed by Carl Vandal for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Review copy has been provided for the purposes of this review. If you enjoy my content, consider using my affiliate links for online shopping and supporting me via patreon.com/Rogue Watson. Also, shout out to the old school Forgotten Realms banner here. That looks pretty nice. So this is an encounter book. I've reviewed several of these in the past, and an encounter is not a... it's obviously not a campaign. It's not an adventure. It's literally just something that happens somewhere. In this case, they are single-page encounters, which is probably about the right size for an encounter. I always like it when I'm reviewing adventures when they, you do your classic overworld section and you're going from point A to point B. And I don't like it when I just get like a table of random encounters. Like, hey, there's 1d6 plus 1 wolves, or it's just way too generic. I really like it, and the official Wizards Adventures has been doing this a lot and doing a pretty good job of it when they still might have the table, but then they'll have a description of those encounters. That's a paragraph long, and be like, okay, hey, when you come across the wolves, they're feasting on a carcass, and maybe the players have a chance to ambush them or something. There's always some kind of extra context in there, or something to play with to make it a little bit more interesting for the DM to run and for the players to experience. So when I'm looking for encounters, I'm looking for that. I'm not necessarily looking for very deep story stuff at all, because I don't necessarily think that's what I want out of an encounter. In fact, I've even run into that trap before, where I've made an encounter too interesting, and then players want to follow up on it. And I'm like, oh, I wasn't actually. I just created this as kind of a way to, get you immersed in the world and have it be reactive and have it make sense in this case, but not for you guys to actually follow up on this other tangent. Like if somebody's coming from like a burned village and they need help or something, oh, whoops, now I have to. The players might want to go to that burned village, in which case that was not the idea there. So I think, in other words, designing an encounter can be very, very tricky and challenging, because for the most part, you do want it to be just kind of a one-off encounter, but you also want it to be at least interesting in some way, more so than just a literal random encounter. So with that being said, what this booklet does, I mean, it's a 50-page book, it's a pretty good size, is take place in this inn that exists in the Forgotten Realms, right on the Sword Coast. It's actually got a primo location between, I believe, Neverwinter and Waterdeep, near, I think that's Leylon, on the crossroads, specifically going east towards Phandalin and Tribor, which is where a lot, in the Desaran Valley, where a lot of the action is taking place, especially in the early days of the 5e campaign. So a great location for this inn. And this isn't just a cutesy way of giving me encounters tied to an inn. We actually get the inn. So it's a fully detailed, fleshed out location. It's got 3 different stories of a map. You can tell this map was, designed using probably some free map making software. But you know what? That's totally fine. That's 100% fine. And I love it. I love that we got the art for this. I don't believe you get separate image files, but these are probably big enough where I could work with these. Well, actually, I take it back. If you go to the very end, they are included as towards the end here, which is very nice. So I love that. We get full artwork of the actual inn, and then it's annotated room to room. There isn't, like, things happening here, but that's kind of also what the encounter section is for, so I guess I'll give it a pass on that. In terms of, like, interesting NPCs, there's, like, maybe 2 blacksmiths that trade off. There's a half-orc, no-nonsense cook. There's the... I believe it's a half-elf or maybe an elf innkeeper, and it's just kind of a normal-ass inn. It's got all the facilities you would expect it to, just a nice little rest stop, but I appreciate that this actually takes a good, 3 or 4 or 5 pages of this booklet is just detailing this inn. Then we get to the actual encounters. There are 10 of these, and instead of being organized by level, they actually all include level scaling, which I like level scaling. But I will say I don't know about level scaling something that much, because I think thematically there are things that a level 2 party should be handling and would make sense for them to handle, and things level 9 party maybe not so much. Like, I don't know if I need my level 9 party to get into like a bar fight, for example, versus that's a perfect thing for a tier 1 party. So and it almost makes the encounter feel too generic. Also, if you can just literally swap in and out the enemies, then I don't know. So I've kind of mixed feelings about how much level scaling there is. I almost wish that the designer had said, okay, this one can be from level 1 to 3. These are the ones for levels 5 to 7 or whatever. So maybe a little bit more separation instead of doing this much extreme. Also, I don't know about using, and the designer does it a couple times, using thugs for level 1 to 2. Thugs are a pretty damn big stat block, as I recall. Don't they have like multi-attack and like 30 hit points? Like, if you do that many thugs per player, it's gonna be real crazy. So for the encounters, I wish I liked more of them. I will say that. I do think too many of them fall in the trap of being a little too generic. It reminds me of playing an MMO or maybe like a JRPG or something where you go into a town or an area that has multiple, people with the exclamation points above their head, and they just want you to do random bullshit that you really don't care about. It's like, I need you to go collect these items. I need you to go find this person. It's just an excuse to kind of go around and explore the area. And in D&D, that's kind of weird because then it's like, well, I need the encounter from my players are already have the thing to go to an area, and I need encounters that they can do along the way. I don't want an encounter that's going to make me have to run. Well, I guess these do include the additional encounters with them. So the encounter, in other words, is like you get the quest at the inn. So, for example, this very first one, Magnificent Heroes of Marraketh, there's a group of people who are oddly wrapped up, and they're asking for help. And then it turns out they're a bunch of orcs who are under attack by just zealous mercenaries, I guess, who are trying to destroy their orc village. And I guess they're friendly orcs. We don't really get a lot of context here, unfortunately. This is probably the limitation we're running into, where these are single-page encounters, and some of them definitely bite off more than they can chew. And this is a good example of one that I think is almost too interesting story-wise without giving me anything at the front, because the mercenaries show up, it turns into a fight where you defend the orcs. You're not really given a choice on that in terms of this encounter. And then it says in the conclusion, hey, now you can go help them defend their village. Well, that's a lot of work for me as a DM to suddenly cobble that together. Like, you just turn an encounter into a whole mini quest arc. It's not really what I was looking for, and it does that a couple times where it gives you like a quest to go do a thing, and then the encounter is like the things that you meet along the way. Whether it's you get like a MacGuffin from a wizard who jumps into a portal, and you have to go to a certain place and you fight things along the way, or you get just a quest from a bard who you have to bring a thing to his mentor, which is a fun little Deacon reference from Neverwinter Nights in that adventure. And then it turns out there's a twist at the end where it was a rival bard who was trying to stop you. They were just having a friendly competition, but then he hires goons to straight up like murder you on the road. So I don't know how friendly of a competition that is. This one, The Spice Must Flow, is just, hey, the place where the innkeeper's like, where we get our spices, like, I don't know what's going on. We're not getting any. And then you go and just fight, whatever generic monsters are there, trolls, orcs, or goblins. Now, they're not all like that. There are some cool ideas. See if I can find the best one. The best one is this one, I believe, When Cometh the Wolfman. There's a fight that breaks out in the tavern, and one of the, like, there's a big person who's pushing around a small one, and the small one suddenly turns into what looks like a werewolf, and then the big one turns into a werebear, and they go at each other, and you're like, what is going on? I guess I need to jump in and stop this fight. And the cool thing is, it turns out that that neither of them are lycanthropes. The small one is a sorcerer who's casting Alter Self to have like wolf, abilities. Which still, it seems like you would get your ass kicked as a sorcerer doing that. And then the other one is a barbarian who's got Path of the Beast with the werebear ancestry, so can make himself look like a bestial form, which is a cool twist to use like player character features, and then you just use those different leveled stat blocks which are included in this adventure. So I thought that was a really cool idea and a neat little twist, and one that is the perfect idea of, okay, this is an encounter you would have at the tavern. This isn't getting another quest to go do another thing, because at that point it becomes a side quest and not an encounter, versus there are actually encounters in the tavern itself. Another one is bidding on this egg. This person shows up, and it becomes this kind of this social RP moment where you just bid on this random egg happening. You can play this game of cards, and there's rules We're playing, where is it? 3 Dragon Annie Challenge here, where you can just play a card game. That's actually kind of what I was looking for when it comes to encounters. If you're going to specifically design encounters that my players would have at an inn, and I say, okay, we had a relatively, maybe easy or non-eventful trip. We've got this inn set up, and then instead of having just a normal, a regular road encounter, maybe I'll surprise them by having an encounter at the inn itself. And this does provide several. There's one where a person walks in who looks like Drizzt, and the big twist is that it's not. It's like a distant cousin who just looks like him, which is funny. And then that's a funny idea, but there's nothing going on there. There's no like twist. He's not being hunted by anybody. It's just kind of a weird, like, I don't know, random cameo. This is probably my second favorite one, Martisha the cockatrice. The cook, no, it's the blacksmith's cockatrice gets loose and runs around the inn, and then the cook's winged cat, the Tressum, end up is chasing it, and the players have to deal with that. That's really cute. That's a clever way of doing an encounter at an inn, and gives a little extra context because the players don't want to kill either of those creatures, but still wants to try and capture them and subdue them. So there are some really cute, fun ideas in here. That's probably about half of them. The other half, like, as I said, are kind of just generic, like, hey, really just the most run-of-the-mill, like, MMO type side quests where go to this area and do this thing, which is kind of not what I want from an encounter. If you're specifically couching them to take place at an inn, I don't want the encounter to then take my players out of that inn. Some of them very far. That one, you go all the way up to Neverwinter, and then you just have like the one road encounter. It's like, all right, well, how they gotta go back to the inn, I guess. Like, it gets kind of weird. In terms of the presentation, it's a little bit lacking. I think it looks fine. It reads well. It's well edited. It's got everything that I would want. I will say that the bar has obviously steadily been raising at the DM's Guild, and the just little things like the fact that the pictures aren't really richly embedded into the text, and I think there could be better organization of these quests. Like, to shout out to Christian Zoich, who does a lot of those encounter books, where at the beginning it says, here's a like 1-sentence description of this encounter. Here is what kind of encounter is it? Is it combat? Is it role playing? Is it social? Is it exploration? Or is it a combination of those things? Here's the location it takes place at. Here's the level range. Like, that's some kind of like organization would work really well. I will say that the fact that they all take up one page is very, very handy, though. It makes it a very easy read to just flip through here and look at each individual one. And as you notice, we do get maps for the ones that don't take place at the inn, and of course we've got maps for the inn itself. So the fact that we've got all these battle maps is a huge plus for me. I absolutely love that aspect of it. And we get stat blocks as well. In fact, there are over 30 stat blocks included in here. Now, granted, half of them are one everybody should have anyway. It's the, your veterans and trolls and goblins and stuff. But anytime there's a creature mentioned here, the stat block is included, which I appreciate. There's kind of a weird effect here. I don't know if the designer used like a literal, like, it almost looks like a scan of the book, although I don't think that's how this is created, but it just a weird, like, faded look to it that I do not like that at all. We also get some original stat blocks, though. Like, half of them are anytime there was a unique creature, like that sorcerer that transformed, and then the barbarian barbarian that transformed. They all have their stat blocks, and because it's a level scaling, we get even more stat blocks than there are encounters, because you have the potential for different kinds of creatures. So the extras that we get here are very, very huge thumbs up from me. All right, so let's go over my pros and cons for encounters at the Wayside Inn. Pro, 10 relatively simple drop-in encounters with level scaling from Tier 1 to Tier 2. Pro, over 30 stat blocks included, about half of which are custom NPCs. And pro, full color battle maps for the in and outdoor locations and encounters. Also, this nice little region map that looks like it may be custom made. I don't know, it's a hex grid, which is kind of nice. And then cons, just that some encounters are a little too generic and forgettable. Or maybe they just do a thing that I didn't want them to do, which is bring my players out to another area and just go fight a thing. It just felt like kind of you got a fetch quest or a go kill that quest. And I literally was not looking for quests. I was literally looking for encounters. Like, just give me an event that happens. It can be, on the onset, just take a random encounter and just twist a few things around some cool ideas. And I think there are some cool ideas in here, and just have that be the encounter without too much extra story. And I think in this case, too many of the encounters, they add a little, maybe too much story weirdly. And then the conclusion includes like way too much like follow up to where it's like this is just more work for me. This is starting a this is the problem that I've run into before, which is you put an encounter that's maybe too interesting and has too much story context, and now it becomes a quest chain versus just a single encounter. Final verdict, though not every encounter is a winner, the Wayside Inn provides plenty of easy-to-run side quests and a fully detailed rest stop for adventurers. Thank you to everyone for watching this video review. You can see my written review at roguewatson.com. You can watch more reviews and follow our own D&D adventures here on my YouTube channel and support my work at patreon.com/RogueWatson. Shoutouts to my platinum patrons, Joe, Will, Thomas, Stan, William, I'm Loud, Brandon, Genocider, David, Eclectic, Roleplayer, Roll, Christopher, Brian, William, David, Jam and Clams, Corey, Koa1337, Jacob, Eric, and Kyle. And gold patrons, RPG, Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Marcus, Dead Lizard Lounge, Sam, Lumpy Spuds, Drome, Nathan, Fast Like a Tortoise, Scott, Humanoid Size, Sphincter, Stephanie, Rufus, and Carolyn. Thank you all very much for your support.